Let's talk now about a team out west that isn't in those same conversations when we're talking about contending this season, but who have been playing some really good basketball as of late. They've won 5 straight, and that is the Houston Rockets, who still have a chance to make the play-in game. They're 3.5 games behind the Warriors and the Lakers, but they're not out of that picture entirely with this win streak that they've been on. But for them, it is obviously more of a long-term proposition because this is such a young team. How optimistic are you about their core and their future, Logan?
I'm very optimistic about Houston's core and their future, and for one primary reason, and that's their defensive identity. I just see such a high ceiling that I think this team could attain in the future, and I don't know if it's possible with Sengun at the 5 spot. They're 8th in defensive rating, but I wonder if a game-changing rim protector would make a meaningful difference. And what I mean by that is, I just think they're a team that is going to be able to turn defense into offense really quick. And you see it in transition a lot during their games where there's just so many athletes on the floor getting down the floor at such a fast rate. If it's Jalen Green, if it's Jabari Smith Jr., if it's Cam Whitmore, if it's Amen Thompson, like the Rockets are just spoiled with insane athletes that if you can get these guys on the floor together and they get defensive stops, they're just unstoppable on the break. They just get down there before you can set up. It's really fun to watch. And the one question mark for them is going to be their half-court offense come playoff time. You know, once they break through and finally are, a consistent playoff team. Because I think the West is so talented, man. It's crazy. It's like who's going to drop off for the Spurs and the Rockets, to be perennial contenders. And then you got a lot of talent with Utah and Memphis. The West is just so unbelievably stacked. But once the Rockets consistently get there, I just see a team with a really good defensive identity. Again, they're going to turn defense into offense, and then it's about consistently creating half-court offense. And that's my only real question mark with this team. I think they're going to be great defensively. I think they're going to be a great rebounding team because of their athletic and physical advantages and their identity. It's going to be about finding that guy. And I like Jalen Green. He's a highlight reel. He's been on a tear recently. He just got Player of the Week his last 5 games. He's 25, 6, and 4 on 50, 41, 74 splits. Man, dude, if Jalen can hit his 3-ball at this kind of clip where he is, dribbling and just stepping back into shots and draining threes, if he can reach that consistently, I don't have a question about them having a creator. It's going to be Jalen Green. But is his shot going to fall that consistently? I don't know. And then sometimes he can be a bit of I don't want to call him a black hole, but, some of his decision-making, it's I want to take a pull-up jumper here. I want to take a fader here. Some of that comes into play. But the role players are really good, and that's kind of the thing I'd hammer home is if you think Sengun is a bona fide number 1, if you think he's a number 2, whatever, he's great. He's a great offensive hub. Whatever you think about Jabari Smith Jr., if he's a 2 or if he's a 3 long-term, he's a great 3-and-D wing that is shooting the hell out of the ball right now. With a surplus of athletes off the bench, with a wide range of outcomes, and the guy I want to give the most credit to here is Ime Udoka. The Celtics lose. Udoka's a culture setter, man, and I think he's exactly what the Rockets needed. Again, I don't know what the Rockets' ceiling is. That's kind of the question, right? Is this a team that can eventually be a title contender, or is this team going to be a consistent team that just makes the playoffs and breaks through? I think a lot of that comes down to what we're going to get out of Jalen Green, Carson. The ceiling that he can reach as a genuine creator, half-court scorer, and how efficient he can be, and how good of a decision-maker he can be, and what level he can reach as a playmaker. I'm going to be honest with you. I'm not too optimistic about Jalen Green becoming a great playmaker until later in his career. Or a great decision maker or a great leader of half-court offenses. I think that probably comes in year 6 or year 7 with a guy of his mold. I just think it's going to take that much time for him to understand the game. But the tools are all there. The physical tools are all there. And the talent and the players' ability, you can't teach athleticism, man. And they got a bunch of freaks here. And so if Amen pops, if Cam Whitmore pops, if Jalen Green does figure it out, the sky is the limit for this team. And the fact that they have done this so soon is really, really remarkable from such a young team. I'm optimistic as them being perennial playoff contenders right now, but there's a lot of other things that I think have to go right for me to elevate them into other conversations. But bottom line, it is really impressive that this team is already here at such a young age.
Yeah, I agree with a lot of what you said. I think this is a team that is going to be in these playoff conversations for a while if they can keep this group together. And that's an issue that's going to present itself is right now they have all these guys on rookie deals, and these are a lot of very high draft picks, and a lot of them are showing promise. And so they may not be able to pay them all, but I do love the defensive identity. I do think that this is a team with rare athleticism, as you laid out, and that's been a priority for them in the draft. I mean, especially this year, getting both Amen and Cam Whitmore, who were top 5 athletes in the draft. Amen is a top 5 athlete in the league, if not the best athlete in the league. But I do agree that as of now, they don't have that, like, clear-cut crown jewel, this is our number one building block for the future. I really like Şengün. He is a star level big. He is not a guy who projects to me as a number one on like a really, really good basketball team. I think that obviously he's a uniquely gifted passing center. I think that he is one of the most skilled post scorers in the league, and he does bring a dimension of physicality there as well. But I still think his overall scoring efficiency at this point is pretty average because of some of his limitations as a jump shooter and because he doesn't have overwhelming athleticism. There's not a lot of super easy stuff for him offensively. And then defensively, he's fine, but he's not going to bring real plus impact there. I mean, he has good hands, but just in terms of his size, there's some limitations. So I really, really like him. But when you're talking about some of these other young cores, I mean, OKC is obviously in a different tier, but when I look at what Indiana has with Hallie, what Orlando has with Paolo Banchero, I think all those guys are in different tiers in terms of my confidence in those guys translating as number ones to really good basketball teams. But Houston has 5 very legit young talents. What they're doing defensively right now, obviously you have to give props to the vets there. You have to give props to the Dylan Brooks and the Fred VanVleet, but still, I mean, they are connected, they are athletic on the perimeter, and it's really impressive. And I think that Amen Thompson, Logan, really might be the prize of this whole crew. And it's tough because when I talk about the ceiling that you see from a Tyrese Halliburton, from a Paolo Banchero, those are kind of guys who it's like, all right, they are going to be your lead offensive option in a conventional sense, creating on ball very, very effectively. Amen, I think, is different in that he could be the best in the league at several things, but they're kind of like complementary things. It's not just on-ball shot creation. He is playing absurdly well right now. Over these last 5 games, he's averaging 15 points and 7 boards a night on 73% from the field, and I really do think makes a good case for best athlete in the league. I've never seen a 6'7" dude move like him. The combination of quickness and bendiness and balance and explosive ups. Like, we already see it. You put him in the dunker spot, you throw the ball up anywhere, and he can go up there and get it. In transition, he is already one of the biggest problems in the league. We are seeing him be a very effective roller. Use him as a screener and going downhill. He's just such a special athlete. And we shouldn't forget that this is like a really special passer. He's just not getting to flash it all that much because of his role, but you do see it in some spots where within the flow of the game, he gets an opportunity, and he's a really, really gifted passer. And then I think he's going to be an all-world defender. He just has such a rare combination of tools. I mean, he's already a disruptor there, but the hands, the length, the screen navigation, the vertical pop, the effort, the rebounding, I mean, he's an absurd rebounder for his size because of what a great vertical athlete he is. That's where I look at him. And I think he can be the best in the world at several things. I think he could be like the best transition scorer in the world. Maybe it has to be a post-Giannis world, but he is just so absurd in the open floor. I think he could be, along with his brother, the best perimeter defender on the planet. I mean, just the lateral quickness combined with him being a bigger wing at 6'7" with that absurd length. And then what he can also do as a help defender, it's ridiculous in terms of rebounding as a wing. Like, all of those things, I look at him and I think this guy absolutely has star potential, but it's unconventional star value, I would say. Again, it's different than what you get from a Tyrese Halliburton, and it's even a little bit different than what I think I expected from Amen, because although we saw all of these special traits from him last year with Overtime Elite, I did project him more into that sort of lead ball handler role, even with his obvious limitations as a pull-up shooter. I mean, his jump shot just being basically broken, and the fact that he doesn't have very good touch from the intermediate range. Anyways, because he was such a great playmaker, because he was such a great athlete, he was just so quick downhill with the ball in his hand, such a great ball handler for his size as well. But now I do think he fits more into that primarily off ball, just weapon, like because of his explosiveness as a cutter, because of what he can do in transition. And then a guy who can create in spots on ball with that sort of unique downhill pressure and playmaking. And so I think if he can just be a decent shooter, and I'm not even worried so much about pull-up shooting. I mean, if you want him to be the best player in the world, then yeah, it'd be great for him to be a pull-up shooter. But if he can just be like an Aaron Gordon level off-ball shooter, where Aaron Gordon's not a good shooter, but if you just completely abandon him over the course of a game, he's capable of making you pay, right? Maybe in some matchups you say, okay, we'll just live with Aaron Gordon shooting a bunch of wide open corner threes, but he's okay. He's capable. If Amen Thompson can get to that level, then I think he is going to do so many things at an absurd 99th percentile level, defensively, rebounding, transition with the really impressive playmaking that, like, he's just going to be unreal. But that's still not a great mold for a guy to be the best player on your team. So I do think they need somebody to step up in that mold. And I'm not super optimistic that it's Jalen Green. I think you hit it exactly on the head. When he is nailing his pull-up jumpers like he has been as of late, I mean, he just looks unbelievable. He is like such a stereotypically great scoring guard when he's doing that because of the blend of quickness and ball handling, his space creation, his balance, his ability to step back and create, 5 feet of space and then nail those looks. It's incredible. And he has been reading the game a little bit better as a playmaker, and his defense has been improved really throughout this year. He has stretches, I would say, where he's particularly engaged, but he has the tools. He's a good athlete. He has a comfortably plus wingspan, and I do think that being in this culture has helped him on that side of the ball. So there is a star in Jalen Green still. I do believe that. Just as a shot maker and shot creator and athlete, he's too gifted to deny that. But we talk about when his pull-up jumper is falling, that just hasn't consistently been the case. 39 guys in the NBA take 6 or more pull-up jumpers per game, and Jalen Green is 37th in effective field goal percentage, an effective field goal percentage of 43 on those shots. He also has below average efficiency as a finisher around the rim. He is really lacking in that intermediate game from floater range. He shoots 30%. From mid-range, he shoots 38%. And I do think he's a good shooter. I think that's pretty clear. The problem is his shot selection is generally very poor. And that has been the case throughout all 3 years of his career so far. And even though he has these moments with live dribble playmaking where you're like, hey, that's impressive, I think more often than not, you're like, damn, Jalen, you shouldn't have taken that shot there. And he's definitely not bringing enough value in the playmaking and defense categories to make up for that inefficiency as a volume scorer right now. So it's tough. It's like he could mature. He could figure those things out on the periphery of his game. He could improve his shot selection and become a bona fide star. That talent is in there. I'm just not super confident in it. And so that is the one spot where I'm like, okay, Houston has a lot to love. Again, Şengün is an offensive star. I think he's going to be a top 25 player in this league. Amen, I think, could be a top 20 player, but he's not going to be a lead offensive initiator. Jabari Smith, I think, has the lowest ceiling, but has a very high floor, has a higher floor than an Amen or a Jalen Green because of that just concrete 3-and-D impact. But when you're talking about contending, you got to have that one clear-cut superstar offensive number one, and that's the box where I'm still waiting for Houston to check it.
And that's the dilemma with Jalen Green. You know, it's so interesting because you watch his tape and you go, he's so tough. You know what I mean? Like, he is. He's so skilled. But that's the dilemma with guys like that and guys that, and I don't want to take anything away from Jalen, but that's what I mean with like a good role player, right? In the situation where Jalen catches the ball on the wing, another guy might swing it to the corner, and that opens something up. Or a guy swings it to the top of the key. If Jalen catches it on the wing, he's going to pound the ball. And it just may not always be the best decision. And it's like, we know Jalen's tough and he's super skilled, but it's like sometimes making the unselfish play is the best one, and I don't always trust Jalen Green to make those decisions, you know?
Yeah.
It just doesn't lead to seamless, easy offense. And I completely agree with what you said. There's a star in Jalen Green, and you can see it. I don't know how you can watch Jalen Green play basketball and not go, holy shit, man, that guy's special. But it's about really weaponizing it and making it lead to winning good offensive basketball, and that's not the easiest thing. And the beauty of it, there's a long time for Jalen Green to figure that out. He has got a lot of career in front of him, and I am really hopeful that he figures it out, because if he does, you are looking at a guy that could be that lead guard for Houston. And I'm so glad they brought in Fred VanVleet this offseason, man, because, a lot of that was going to fall on the shoulders of Jalen.
Yeah.
If they didn't. And I don't think he's just cut out enough for that. And I hope he figures it out, man, because he is super skilled. I was going to ask you, ironically, you do that so many times, Carson, on the pod, where I'm going to ask you a question, and right at the end of your spiel, you put a bow on it and you answer it
Because I talk
me.
for 12 minutes at a time.
Oh, you're also him. So
Oh, thanks, bro.
I was going to ask if you thought Amen Thompson had like a top 10 ceiling or something like that, but you kind of made it concrete that you think top 20 is attainable. So let me ask you two variations of the question.
Okay.
If Amen does not figure out his jump shot, what is his ceiling? And if Amen does figure out his jump shot, what is his ceiling?
I honestly think it depends on to what extent we are saying figures out.
Okay. He's a good shooter off the catch, spotty pull-up.
If he's a good shooter off the catch, spotty pull-up, then I think he could be like a top 15 sort of player. I mean, I guess it really is going to depend on the nuances. It's like, okay, is he John Morant level pull-up?
Yeah.
But I think, again, if he is a capable spot-up shooter, then he is going to excel in so many different areas that you will get star-level value. If he becomes a decent pull-up shooter, then I think you are looking at a guy who could be a top 10 player, because then it's like, okay, well, now maybe we really can run offense through this guy, and he is both a totally unique rim pressurer, one of the best passers in the league, one of the best defenders in the league, one of the best rebounding wings in the league. Like, that guy would just be an unbelievable basketball player. I'm just not confident in that projection, but I don't think he even needs to do that to be a star. He's that special at so many things.
What if he reaches like the Aaron Fox level of shooting?
Oh my God. I mean, could be a top 5 player. 100%. It's absurd what he is as an athlete. It's absurd what he can be as a defender. It's absurd what he can be as a playmaker with the ball in his hands consistently. I don't know. What do you think? Like, is he the most valuable asset when you look at these 5 young Rockets standouts? Who to you is number 1 in terms of value?
Man, that's a good question. They have so many. That's what's crazy, dude. You can really pick almost anybody. I hate picking against Sengun because I think Sengun and Jabari Smith, their floors are so high at this point that they're just going to be good players wherever they go.
And Sengun's more than that. Sengun's a star.
Yeah.
I mean, he's going to be at least a low-level star, like a fringe all-star kind of guy.
For sure. I think it probably would be a man for me, but it's so tough because I also don't want to pick against Jalen Green because there is a route. You know what I mean? There is a path.
Yeah.
The one thing against Jalen is just I feel like I've watched enough of him at this point to know what he is, and his deficiencies make you mad. It's like that guy at the Rec, man, who's just really talented. He's 6'5", he's like 200 pounds. He's a great he could be like the most imposing guy on the court because everybody looks like me out there. They're skinny and like 6 foot tall. And if he just went to the hoop, he could probably drop all 21 points in a pickup game. But then he says, nah, I'm going to go Carmelo Anthony mode and just take a bunch of pull-up jumpers. It's just frustrating sometimes watching him play and knowing that he could be more effective as a winning basketball player. And because of that, I probably would say amen. But let me ask you this. Do you think Green, my final Rockets question here, do you think Green could be a winning number 2? Like straight up in that scoring, if you put a real point guard alongside him, or if a men figured it out, do you think Jalen could play that number 2, fill it up, bucket getter role?
Potentially. I think it really is going to depend on how consistently he applies himself defensively, where, again, he has progressed this year, and the level that he can reach as a playmaker.
The Rockets are still 7 points per 100 possessions worse with Jalen.
He's not a good defender, but he definitely has his moments, and I think particularly in isolation, you've seen him be like pretty prideful about not wanting to get beat one-on-one, and he has the tools. But overall, I think that your rec analogy, I mean, listen, it's not perfect for me, and here's why. If you're talking about a guy who's 6'5", 200 in a rec setting, I mean, that guy should just be able to bully everybody. Jalen doesn't have that sort of strength advantage, but I see what you're saying. I would analogize it more to what we see from like a Cam Thomas, where we become enamored with these guys who are super skilled shot creators. They have the balance, they have the shiftiness, they have the depth of the bag, but if you don't consistently create easy shots for yourself, and if you aren't playmaking and defending at a high enough level, you can get your 23 a night inefficiently. You're not a guy that teams are going to want to bank on. And Jalen Green clearly, to me, can be better than Cam Thomas. He could be in a different league. And I think that he's better at those peripheral aspects of the game. But he's not good enough. And I mean, he's still so inefficient over the course of this year, dude. Like 53% true shooting. That's 5% below league average. If I were ranking these guys, there's just no case for Jalen over Amen because of the ceiling that I see with Amen, and because Şengün is just like a clear star right now. So I think he's at least 3, and then what's tough is, I do think he has a higher ceiling than Jabari, but I just know that Jabari is going to be a guy who I want on my team. And if Jalen Green stayed at this level, then, he just ends up presenting some real issues as inefficient volume shot chucker who's not that great at the complementary things. And I don't want to just destine him to be that because he's in his 3rd year and he's so talented, but I'm not the most optimistic about Jalen Green. And I think that there are guys who I'm more confident in Houston. But it is tough because it's like if Amen were a conventional lead playmaker, then maybe they would be a super intuitive fit there. But I just don't really see Amen excelling in that archetype right now. But also it's like, obviously Fred VanVleet isn't a star, but he is like an unselfish lead playmaking guard who's good, and all of Jalen's issues have kind of just been the same this year. But, Logan, when we talk about the Rockets, we talk about their special athletes. And by the way, I do just want to shout out Cam Whitmore because we all had a feeling he was going to be the steal of the draft just because he was like a consensus top 10 kind of talent, and then he fell all the way to 20th. He is just a bowling ball. I mean, he's just such an absurdly powerful downhill athlete, 230 pounds of solid steel, and he shot the ball well this year. So he, to me, is still like a bull in a china shop. Like, there are a lot of out-of-control possessions. As a playmaker, he's not giving you much. But, I mean, just with his athletic tools and with being a capable shooter, like, he is very, very intriguing as well, and he has been ahead of schedule this rookie year.